Hey guys.
Hello.
While everybody is logging in here, any questions or challenges to start the day?
Well, since Patrick's Day is coming up next Friday, just wondering what everyone's doing or what's recommended that would be fun or productive for that holiday. Or
Well, that's a good question. You know, the few St. Patrick's Day events that I have heard of various schools doing had a tendency to turn out to be a bunch of drunk college and 20 somethings with green beer flowing. So I'm I'm not sure what's anything productive to tie into St. Patrick's Day. Let's see if anybody else has a good opinion of that rather than, you know, fun events around your own school, maybe a buddy referral opportunity, perhaps. Anybody have any bright ideas on that one? Don't everybody jump in on that one at once.
I didn't hear the question, Master Oliver. Sorry.
St. Patrick's Day is coming up next week. Any great things that you could do to co-promote with St. Patrick's Day?
Well, what I always did each month is have a theme. I would always decorate the school with the theme of the month, and we would have a special, a social. Each month I tried to have one social event for the students and one a training event for the students, so they could bring a friend. I wouldn't do two training things the same month. I wouldn't do two social things, but a social thing is different than a training thing. So it's a St. Patrick's Day party and wear your green and that kind of thing. It's an excuse to have a party. Our St. Patrick's Day is call it the birthday party format without the birthday party. It's the green and you decorate the school with St. Patty's Day stuff. February we decorate it with Valentine's stuff. January we decorate it with New Year stuff, and we have a New Year party. So each month there's usually something that you can tie into, whether it's a Mother's Day theme or a Father's Day theme or 4th of July or back to school. June, I think June is Father's Day. I think May is Mother's Day, if I remember right. And even June, that was always kind of the first month of the summer. So I'd have a summer party and we would decorate it a certain theme. So, let your school get in the mode of letting it advertise what you're doing. What is our social event of the month? Because the school is already decorated that way. They can see Valentine's stuff around. They can see St. Patrick's stuff around there. So, it's always an excuse to have social and having a regular event, and make sure you block out your calendar. Put them for a board breaking here and a foam chuck here and a bow staff here, or whatever your school is doing. I don't know not all the schools do the same kind of weapon stuff. It can be a bully prevention thing. It can be a women's self-defense thing. It can be any of those topics, but it's a training seminar. And it gives you an excuse to get your students to invite their friends. And I tell you, nothing helped promote it better than to reward the students for coming. If they came to the nunchuck event, they got a stripe. If they brought a friend, they got a 5 bonus stripe. If that friend took an intro, they got a 10 bonus stripe. If that person signed up, they got a 20 bonus stripe. Well,
yeah, and we spent an awful lot of time on that stuff last week, Matt Smith, as far as referral systems and stuff. If anybody missed it, the recording is on the member site. But there you go, William. That's the I guess the only thing we're coming up with St. Patrick's Day is an internal fun event, but don't miss the takeaway that Master Smith was saying is make sure you have one of those big year at a glance calendars, and every month you have bring a friend type of training events, and you have wherever you have a good excuse, you have some kind of just social event that you can do in the school. And I might add some nuance to that, which is that you can do training events and or social events that narrow target smaller audiences of your student body. And the bigger and bigger you get, then the more it makes sense to do that, right? So I can do something for the moms. I could do a mom self-defense or a fitness-ish stuff or something like that. I can do something for the dads. I can do something for the under 6-year-olds.
Oh, they're good profit.
Bob, you snoozing?
No, I got it. You can do, you can subset it and have different groups of students where you're doing something individually with as well. The value of the year at a glance, and we're all guilty of this. We all have the sense of we wake up one day and oh my goodness, the first quarter is gone. Wow, it's already the middle of March. One thing or another. So if you take all of the U.S. holidays and put it on the calendar, and you take all of the kind of Hallmark holidays or whatever else it might be that are kind of made up or national something or other day or whatever, and put them on the calendar, then it creates it stimulates your thinking to come up with different things that are useful to tie in. But if you don't do that year at a glance, it's very easy to go a month or two and you didn't do anything, and then you can't figure out why your referrals are down, or and the internal student events as well, although they're fairly labor intensive sometimes, they are really good for esprit de corps. It's really good for having everybody engaged and excited in one thing or another. Hey, Paul, it's good to see you on the meeting here, even on video. Welcome. How's the weather up in the Great North? You're muted. What's that?
Paul.
Since he's muted, it's cold.
Cold up on the border of Canada.
Yeah, feels like it. Yeah.
Yep. There you go.
And guys, there's another thing that I always try to do about every other month was try to plan a school activity that we could all engage in. I would do a laser tag thing or a rebounder thing where it was just a school event where we all socialize together. And it creates a bonding experience for your students, where you get a chance to get out of the school. Everything doesn't have to be in the school, but I would tend to do those about every other month. And it really gives them a chance to get to know each other and create friendships, because I'm going to tell you, when a student has a friend in the school that they're constantly communicating with, they're less likely to drop out than if they're a little loner in there. That's why our families do so much better, is because they've got that group support. So, let them develop these friendships among each other and have those kind of activities. And it doesn't matter. It can be a bowling thing. We went to, I told you some of them with the paintball gun.
Trampoline place.
There's so many of those kind of places where kids go for entertainment that make it a lot of fun. And it's good for your staff too, to get them to interact with the students and get to know them and develop a little more, closer bond, and develop a little better rapport with them.
Yeah. And I might add to that, one of the things I did on a semi-regular basis, Matt Smith, you were really good at this, certainly from the standpoint of targeting and hitting goals, is create fun activities for your staff. Take them all to the pro baseball game, organize around. We used to do organized around our black belt retreats, as we'd go rent paintball guns and one thing or another and go, play paintball wars on the ski slopes. But, things like that with your staff, or with your black belts only. We used to have a black belt class every Friday, and then all the staff would go out. I mean, it's pretty tame, but we'd all go out to a movie and one thing or another together. But, things like that, where you're creating a business related activity that's fun and outside of the normal work activity is always a positive thing when you can orchestrate it. The other thing you said there, Master Smith, and again, this has nothing at all to do with St. Patrick's Day, but the more you can orchestrate making sure all of your new students get to know the other beginners, and all of the beginners get to know each new student coming in, and of course, everybody who's staff, quasi-staff, volunteer, leadership, them getting to know the new students, the better. I always went through and did names with everybody in the beginner class, had them memorize the names. I'm sure most of you have done it where first person says their name, and then everybody says it, and the second person says their name, and they say the first person's name, the second person's name, and you go through the list. And it can take a couple of minutes, but all of a sudden people have got all the names down. But even more important than simple things like that are introducing parents. Mrs. Jones, I know that Susie goes to XYZ Elementary, so does Bobby. I thought I might introduce the two. Obviously, you're in the same neighborhood. I know that you guys live over in the Westheimer neighborhood. I thought I'd introduce you to the Jones family, who's also in that area. But the more you can do to introduce them to commonalities, introduce the students to other people who are in the same company, the same school, the same neighborhood, have common interest in one thing or another, then the better you are at them creating rapport with each other. And ultimately, the reason why people don't drop out sooner or later is because they don't want to let down the other students. They don't want to let down the instructor. It's greatly about relationship. I refer to it as rapport, but it's greatly about relationship among the students and relationship with the staff from a standpoint of really feeling appreciated and needed. So you want to go through and put together a checklist. And one of the ones I've used a lot and repeating myself is having like a flashcard of pictures of all the students, and making sure that all the leadership team and the instructors get to know all the students, and if they're kids, the students, their parents, the grandparents, anybody who's coming in with them, and getting those names memorized, and then discipline your staff to use the parent's name as well as the child's name 3 times every class. So making sure that they're very focused on interacting with them. We always called it the rules of 3. Everybody gets greeted within 3 foot of the front door. Everybody gets physically and appropriately touched 3 times in every time they've been in class or been in the school or more. Everybody gets their name used 3 times. And I might add eye contact. Make sure that your staff members are all, especially in class, making eye contact with each individual. New instructors have a tendency to teach 30 people and see them as an amorphous group, rather than teaching 30 individuals and interacting with, using their name, appropriately touching them and making eye contact with each individual. So those are all elements that dramatically improve your retention early on, and they're essential. And then, Matt Smith, as you said, if you don't have the annual calendar up and you don't have things scheduled on a regular basis, it's easy for a new person to enroll, and all of a sudden it's 3 or 4 months before you have anything. And what you want to do really is, when you enroll them, you say, oh, by the way, we have the big buddy day contest, event that's coming up a week from Saturday. We also have, the whole school's invited over to, Dart Wars on X, Y, and Z day. And there's a sign up list here. If you want to come, it's going to be, only we've rented the place out for the day. You want to be able to tell them about all of the upcoming things that are happening and get them engaged right away. I mean, you want the parent to be, wow, they got a lot of stuff going on. This is really cool. But more importantly, you want the the student to get to know everybody and really be engaged. And again, that's true whether it's adults or kids, probably even more critical with an adult clientele. They've got to get to know everybody. They got to feel comfortable. You got to introduce them, share with them commonalities, share with them common careers, common schools, common workplaces, commonalities that you know. And by the way, you can't do that if you don't know that stuff, right? So the more you get to know about your students, about what activities they're involved with, what their hobbies are, what their different interests are, then the better off you are from the standpoint of really getting everybody to have a good relationship with each other. Two things quickly before we go on. Many of you have seen the notices, but we have that free webinar next week. It's not designed as a member activity. It's for schools that need a jump start from still recovering from COVID or just need a jump start generally. One of our observations is recently is schools that are in New York, Philadelphia, Maryland, Pennsylvania, Toronto, anywhere in California, Seattle or Portland, Detroit, got hammered a lot worse than the rest of the country just because of the local government, the way they responded. So there certainly seems to be a lot of areas, a lot of places where, the ones that are still standing are now $250,000 in debt or something like that. For all you guys who have been around a while, and this, of course, is a quick start meeting, but a lot of you who have been around 5 years still show up for these, which I take as a compliment. You guys managed to get through COVID relatively unscathed. But the general industry, our guesstimate was, and I don't have any way to verify the number, but our guesstimate was 40 to 50% of the industry went out of business. But I got to tell you what, a lot of people who are still who made it through after borrowing 100 grand, 150 grand, 250,000. And I've told everybody here before, I'm allergic to debt. I mean, that's a horrible burden to shoulder. And or ended up way behind with their landlord and are now having problems with that. So anybody who needs a jump start here, feel free to invite them next Thursday. I put the registration link in the member group, and I'll send that out. And then we're going to be, believe it or not, gearing up for our next live meeting, which is coming up in Colorado in May. So make sure you have that on your calendar and are all set for that.
When is it, Stephen?
It's in May, middle of May.
What's the date? Do you know offhand?
Quick start is the May 18th and 19th, and leadership will be 19th and 20th.
18th, 19th. Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, and we're posting all this in the member group, plus in the packet we mail out every month with Lee Meltier materials. Every month has had the calendar for the year, and so be on the lookout for that. Good. So that was, and that'll be in Golden, and May, in theory, should be a good time to travel to Colorado. It's not peak ski season, and it's not peak anything season as far as I know. So hopefully it'll be relatively easy to get in and out, and everything won't be sold out like it would be right now in the middle of spring break. Seems like people are either going to the beaches or the ski slopes for spring break. So there you go. Okay. Any other, William, that was a good question, but as far as external things going on out in the market, if you're trying to round up a bunch of adults, it might be useful, but even the schools that we've had that are predominantly adult programs, MMA or BJJ, the Green Beer Festival, where about 2/3 of the audience is already hammered, tends to be kind of a rough environment for a live booth, at least in the relatively few experiences we've had. So I'm not sure it's a perfect holiday for getting out into a live event. I will tell you though that there is there are some big movie releases coming up. The Ant-Man, which was the same time that we were in Florida, was a huge release. But the other huge release that's coming up very, very quickly is the next Guardians of the Galaxy movie. And it's again, you know, a big Marvel movie. And what is the release date on that? It is coming up pretty quickly.
John Wick 4 is coming out in March as well, apparently, for the
Yeah.
adults.
Yeah, for the adult crowd, that may have some potential. It looks like Guardians is until August 1st. I thought it was coming up sooner than that. Oh no, May 5th. May 5th. I'm getting conflicting signals of May 5th. It looks like what it is. So be on the lookout. There are some big movie releases, and you know, if you're anywhere near a big multiplex, especially a big AMC or Regal multiplex, a movie release like that is a natural home run. And if you guys don't know, I mean, we were really focused on doing this for a while. All you have to do is Google. What am I looking at here? All you have to do is Google projected opening weekend. And nowadays in the movie industry, they come pretty close to giving you a pretty good projected opening for these movies, especially as it gets closer and closer. So, you know, there's a lot of times there's movies that seem like they might be a good target audience, but then when you go and look at what they're expecting them to do on gross, they don't have the kind of numbers that you would hope for them to have, if that makes sense.
A couple of things that you said before that
Yeah.
I just wanted to anchor in a little bit, Master Oliver.
Yeah.
One, when you were talking about the calendars on the wall for
Yeah.
putting your events, I know, and I don't see Tim Harrison here today. I know he's at Bike Week in Florida. He's been there for the whole week, but I was going to have him talk about it. But when he put those calendars on the wall, where
Talk about Bike Week in Daytona.
that's where he is. Yeah.
Well, what were we going to talk about? The bunch of fat boys on fat boys.
No, sir.
Just saying.
You missed my whole point there. I said I was
Okay.
going to have him talk about his calendars on his wall.
There you go.
Were important, but he is in Bike Week, and that's where the Bike Week came in. Okay.
There you go. Gotcha.
So now that I got you straight, okay. Now, those calendars, having those things on the wall where you're looking at them on a daily basis, and you see that next week is empty, you don't have anything, is a constant reminder to yourself to have something. And, you know, you got to have something every day. Get something that you're doing marketing, whether it's flyers, whether it's rack cards, whether it's bandit signs, whether it's a live event, whether it's an internal, you know, whatever it is, you've got to have those things constantly going. And the more of them you get going, you know, it's one of the reasons Tim grew so fast, and one of the reasons Paul Hillson, you know, has grown the speed that he has. Is I talk to these schools that are having trouble with their enrollments, and they're all have the same in common thing. They're
Not doing
all
enough stuff.
doing one or two things.
Yeah.
And it could be that they're getting a lot of leads from those one or two things, but they're not converting into appointments and intros. And that's because they're marketing in the wrong pond. So that's why you have to do that Parthenon that you constantly beat in their head, Master Oliver.
Yeah.
Is so each of them have a different tune that are going to bring in certain people. And that's what makes a good month. It's not, I mean, occasionally, you know, like Jan will have that back to school thing, and a couple of you have had good success on a movie or something, or some live event, but it's all the multi things that you do that make the difference. So make sure that you have a calendar that everybody can see, all your staff, that you can get those things and fill up that calendar. Now, the other thing that you said that I want to play up a little bit, because it's another reason. The one thing that I always did with the staff is I constantly had goals for them. I mean, we don't want to be hypocritical here. You know, we're teaching our students goal setting, but then you guys don't have a goal. You don't have your monthly goal. You're not keeping track of your monthly goal to see if you're on track. You're just waiting till the end of the month to see what you did. That's not a goal. That's just keeping an eye on the results. What you have to do is you have to have a goal that you're working towards. And I always had a low goal and a high goal. And if we had that low goal and high goal, and once you've got your school going along, I always had it as a 10 and a 20 because those were real attainable. And I knew that every month, if we could be growing by 10 or 20%, then that is going to really increase the growth of the school in the long run. So I did do monthly goals that I gave the staff actual cash dollars for a low goal or cash dollars for a high goal, and whatever a full-time person got, you know, I considered them working 40 hours, even though most of them did more than that. And so that way our part-timers, whatever I was giving the 40-hour people, part-timers, if they were working 10 hours or 20 hours a week, then they would get a proportion. If they were working 20 hours a week part-time, then they would get half that bonus. So we keep, you know, that way we're giving accurate bonuses for everybody. And we had a certain amount for a low goal and a certain amount for a high goal. And that's a monthly goal. And then we would have a quarterly goal. And if we hit our high goal for the month, then I always took the staff out to a dinner somewhere. We rented a limo and took the staff and their spouse or significant other got to go with them. And we would go to a dinner at one of the nice restaurants in town in a limo. When
Current
we
terminology there, Master Smith, is you ushered an Uber Black.
I don't know what that is.
That's how Uber started, as an app to pull limo service in on demand.
Well, yeah, we didn't have Uber back then, so
No, I know. I'm just saying current terminology.
we were doing a stretch limo to fit everybody in.
Yeah.
But that's if they hit their high goal. But then we had a quarterly goal and they got a cash bonus for that. And the reason I made sure that we did the quarterly goals, and then we had a 6-month goal, and they liked each one of those because at the end of 3 months, that first quarter, they could qualify for a quarterly bonus if we hit our low or high goal for the quarter. And because the March is the last month of the quarter, they could also hit the high goal for the month. So then they would get a monthly bonus cash and a quarterly goal. And then at 6 months, they would have our half year semi-annual, and they would get a 6-month bonus, and then their second quarter bonus, and then their monthly bonus. I mean, I had these guys have an opportunity to get all kinds of bonuses. But if we were hitting our goals, I could afford to do that. And on the quarterly ones, what I would do if we hit the high goal on the quarterly, then we would always have a big group, just like Master Oliver was saying. And he was there when well, maybe you weren't there when I had my schools.
No, you fired me when you acquired them.
Yeah, there we go.
Just saying.
You were going to school. You couldn't work.
Open mouth and search foot.
There you go. That's you.
No, you.
So these were not the June Reese schools. These are when I had my own schools. But anyway, when we would go on events, I mean, we went on ski trips, we went on charter boat fishing trips, we went on, we did skydiving, and you had an opportunity to do the skydiving. You were there when we did that, I think. But
No, I did not have a death wish.
Yeah, you didn't show up for that one, but
I did not.
But the others did that came, and we had a great time. So, and like you said, the Redskin game we'd go to, or some kind of a basketball game or a football game, something where you can do it together, but tie it in with your goals. And if you don't have these goals set out and you're not keeping tabs on those goals, then you're really a little bit hypocritical here, because we should have those kind of goals for ourselves, like we're preaching to our students that if they want to accomplish more, then they need to have goals.
Yeah.
And so that's why we need our school to have goals too, to make sure that we're green and growing.
Yeah.
And we are, they can benefit from it, but it also creates a good bond and everybody gets excited about doing those kind of things.
No, that's exactly right. That's exactly right. I think the conversation to have with Tim about Bike Week is how it feels to be able to do any and all things like that you want and have the cash flow to support it, and the staff in place to support it. There's the right conversation on the Daytona Bike Week, Master Smith. But I'm surprised you're not down there with Bill Wallace.
Exactly.
Yeah, yeah. How many different Daytona Bike Weeks did you go to and actually buy a motorcycle while you were there?
Probably all of them.
All of them, yeah.
All of them I went to.
I think you're now at motorcycle number 22 that you have bought at events like that or something like that.
Actually more, but
Okay.
I only have 5 right now. But no, if you're talking about recycling, yeah, and getting more, yeah, I have bought and got rid of more than 20.
Okay. So I was being conservative for a change on that one. Hey, and Giannis, you sent over an enrollment conference video there. I haven't watched it. Matt Smith, have you watched it yet?
Well, I did, and what I told Yana that I thought would be helpful for everybody is if we shared that with everybody and then let them watch it and then let them hear comments, let her hear comments from them also. And, pros and cons, because remember, when we're doing these things, it's not just about patting them on the back, but, if there's something in there that we can find that we think that could help them improve, or if there's not, at least then they know they're on the right track. And if not, then they know what they might need to change.
Yeah, and this is on track with where I wanted us to go for the rest of the time here. Matt Smith was this, if you want, I don't like using the term, but sales orchestration. Can everybody see that okay?
Yes, sir. Looks good.
Yeah. Let me make my first comment, and there may be people who disagree with me, but I don't like having anything that's a sales conversation, and I'm going to basically narrow that into an enrollment or a renewal. I don't like to have it across a desk from somebody. And there is quite a bit of data on this now, from the standpoint of when people are kind of sort of trained that when you're sitting on across the desk from somebody, there's 2 environments where it's productive. One area where it's productive is if you want them to feel like they're in a subservient role. And then sometimes you'll see, executive suites set up where, the chairs on the other side of the desk actually sit lower than the person sitting behind the desk. And it's an implicit power arrangement. I'm not sure that analysis from a power standpoint is useful for us, but, if you want to bring a student in and critique them, you want to correct their behavior, one thing or another, sitting behind a desk in a formal office with all of your diplomas and certifications behind you is useful. From a standpoint of a sales environment, Jan, the first thing I don't particularly like is the setting here. You have, I presume, parents and the child. The child, it looks like, is sitting on sharing a chair with dad, and their backs are really up against the wall, which psychologically is an uncomfortable position. You want people to feel comfortable, and you want them to feel like you're on the same side. So I would start with, without listening to anything else going on, saying, if at all possible, I would change the environment in which you're doing the enrollment conference, the renewal conference. If you look at what's being done now in car dealerships, and it's again one of those environments that people tend to distrust, quote unquote, a salesman. Any dismissive language about salespeople usually starts with used car. But in the high-end dealerships now, they're going to, as I mentioned before, kind of the curved booths. I know the high-end BMW and Mini dealers that I have spent way more money at than I should have recently. Have now it's almost like a curved kind of intimate restaurant-ish booth, but it's not where somebody's sitting across the table. It has a feel where you're on the same side. And again, there's been a lot of good research that shows a round table works better. But the sitting across the desk, one is power relationship and two is negotiation. So what it has a tendency to click off of is a feeling of discomfort to some extent, a feeling of coming in. It kind of clicks off the feeling of I'm now going to the finance office. And the second element it does compared to a round table is it tends to spark the element of negotiation. Where again, if we're sitting at a round table, then it feels like we're all on the same side. That's the idea. So that would be my first comment, just looking at the orchestration. Now, I'm not sure we're going to be able to hear this. Let's see if it
Before you
works.
start it, Master Oliver,
Yeah.
just because you were talking on that format.
Yeah.
What probably gives me fingernails on the chalkboard is more the walls.
Yeah.
I don't like blank walls. There should be karate figures, this and that, and positive sayings. And a black belt is a white belt who never quits. We're a black belt school, or different things like that. So I think the decorations, you can have pictures of your staff there. They can be doing an action shot, and then you can point out who your staff is. But I would work on the decorations of the office a little better too, instead of blank walls.
Yeah, and to be fair, we can't see what the prospects are seeing. So the question would be, what's Yana, what's to your left, what's to your right, and what's directly behind you. But again, there's good data that shows, having your diplomas, certifications, awards, if you've done a book or something like that, having a kind of like I have a behind my shoulder, having a framed covers of the books, or the canvas prints of the books is useful. Certainly in all areas of the school, pictures of students and testimonials about the value of the program and so forth is always extremely useful. So I would always add as much of that stuff as I possibly can as well throughout the school. But I couldn't agree with you more, Master Smith. So let's see if this works. It may or may not.
Can I quickly ask a question? Oh,
Go right ahead.
Do we have scripts or
Yes.
kind of decision trees, and are they on the Quick Starter website? I haven't
Yes.
stumbled across them yet. Okay.
Yeah, they should be. Bob, if you can find those and share that with Patrick. Also, Patrick, in that Quick Start program, there is a complete word-for-word video of me doing first intro and enrollment conference. And then there's I think there's two different enrollment conferences, two different introductory classes. One of them is designed to be single adult male. The other one is two parents and a kid. And the way I would always train staff, by the way, is I wouldn't give them the script. I'd give them the video, and I'd have them go transcribe it. Then I'd review it with them, and then I'd have them outline, and then I'd review it with them. Then I'd have them memorize. Then I'd review it with them, and then I'd have them memorize not just the words, but the tonality, the pacing, and the body language. Those three things ultimately more important than purely what the words were. And ultimately, I wanted them to be able to come in and do the conference exactly the way they saw it on the video, including the pace, body language, leaning in, leaning back, etc. So, it's easy to overestimate the value of a script and underestimate all of the stage management that has to go along with getting the outline of the process to work right. If that makes sense. So you guys tell me if you can hear this. If not, we'll scrap it for a second, but let's go ahead.
Yeah. Yeah, we love that. That's all. Thanks. And it wasn't just you and your. Perfect. Keep it fresh.
Is it, can you hear that?
It's breaking up for some reason.
Yeah, well,
Master Oliver, I have a question.
go ahead.
So would you say don't do the enrollment in the office, or would you say fix the desk and add all the things that you mentioned?
Well, I guess it depends. If I had my druthers, and oftentimes it's not in practice possible, but if I had my druthers, I would be in a small classroom, and but if you think of how you're stage managing it, what normally on the second lesson we're doing is they're in a group class, right?
Yes.
Then we're pulling them out of a group class, and I would prefer it to feel like we're moving into an intro room or a smaller classroom. Really, I'd like it to be, I pull them off to the side of the class and I sit down and do the conference there, with the exception of I want it to be private. And that means you have to move into a different room, right? What we know is the more you go from, again, think of a common experience of buying a car. I'm in the showroom looking at the new Corvette. I just took it out to drive. I'm hot to trot. And then they take me into the finance guy's office. There's a huge decrease in the level of positive emotional energy with that transition, right? On the other hand, if I'm still sitting out there, on the showroom floor, which is again the way the high-end dealerships are doing it, in the little intimate-ish booth, or round table where I'm still staring at the car. And in our case, oftentimes we accomplish that by windows, right? You have stuff on the wall that supports reinforcing that opinion. That's all the things that Master Smith just said. And then you have windows where you can still see out. I like intro rooms that are basically, or any offices are basically fish bowls, so that they're still seeing the class, they're still seeing what's going on, assuming you've stage managed it well, right? I don't want them
What's on
to.
the other side of that wall behind them?
Oh, no, behind them,
Yes.
that would be the floor and the seating area.
Yeah.
Okay. What I would do, what I did in our office that was like that, is I cut a big opening and put glass there, and it
Okay.
makes the room so much more open. With all of y'all in there, it looks very cramped. I don't know who the girl is there with you, but I would not have her in there unless she's learning how to do an enrollment conference or something. But she's going to be distracting to them. I see that she's on her phone. You see how her phone's lit up there? So that means even though she looked over at something, she's over there messing with her phone or doing something that can distract, because they're looking over that way at you, and you want them all focused in on you too.
Okay. Yeah, I have her in there just so she can hear the conversation, but.
Yeah. Again, it's hard to see the layout of the rest of the room, but instead of her right over your shoulder, I might put her over there with the parents, or over on the side of the desk, so that she's, actively involved in the conversation rather than being, and of course you can tell her, keep your mouth shut, but so that she's physically engaged in. And by the way,
When we did that, we had on that back wall behind you, there would be a credenza there. She could be turned around facing that wall, not facing them. And that way she's listening, but then kind of like she's doing a little busy something. The position she's in and looking at them and all is a little distracting. But if they're just looking at the back of her head and she's there busy, doing some paperwork kind of stuff, as long as it's not making noise or distracting, but she definitely shouldn't have her phone on when she's in there. What does the rest of that room look like? Are those all solid walls, or is there glass on any of those walls?
No, they're all solid.
Yeah, see that they feel like they're in a cubicle. I mean, they're in a No,
Yeah, the wall that's to your immediate right and the wall that's behind them, if you could open them up and turn them into big windows,
Okay.
would help.
And it's
Uh,
real cheap to do. They just frame it in and
Yeah.
put a piece of glass and it opens. I never had an office that had walls like that. Yeah,
Okay.
that left to your left there, you know, that would have been at our school a solid wall because that's goes into the next business that's next door to
Mhm.
us. But the other walls would at least two of those four walls would have big windows where
Okay.
they could see. And even the door I had, I didn't like a solid door. I would have, even if I had to have one of the doors cut out with the glass in it or a solid glass door,
Okay.
it opens up the place so much more. And
Would you would
if
sorry.
Go ahead.
you can
Go
cut
ahead.
out the
would you
center-
would you offer them a drink,
Sure.
Oh, yeah.
like a beer or something? I don't know.
A beer.
Uh,
Obviously-
I would offer them a bottle of water. I don't think I would offer them a gin and tonic or a
Get them
Coors.
drunk. Get them drunk.
Yeah, no.
No,
let's-
no cigarettes. Don't offer them a cigarette.
We give them 2
Yeah,
shots,
let's-
might be easier to sign them.
Yeah, let's not do that. But that's sounding like our old days in Texas, Oklahoma, Master Smith.
Yeah,
Yeah, let's not
not us, but our instructors.
yeah, no, yeah, let's not revisit that. Not mine, but the rest of the lineage, let's say. But I don't know if we're gonna be able to hear this okay, but you guys have to tell me.
That was just kind of the time we talked about the programs. So he just accepted.
Is that, can you hear that?
I can't really hear that.
Okay, well, let's not try then. I think that's about as good as we're gonna get. Yana, why don't you walk us through what your process is in this conference?
So I guess I just wanted to ask the verbiage in regards to the tuition and then the payment process, but you can't really hear that, so.
Right, I can post this into the group, and then we can watch it from there.
Okay.
So that'll be easier than trying to project it over Zoom. For some reason, trying to project a video, maybe there's a methodology that I'm not familiar with, but
How did you film that?
it's just a
with the
camera
camera.
up in the corner. Yeah.
Say it again.
Camera up in the corner of the ceiling.
Was that your camera that is like for all your rooms that record your stuff going on?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, everybody should have that in every room in the school, short of places that have an expectation of privacy. So,
A
Yeah.
lot of those cameras up that high and stuff, sometimes the audio isn't quite as good as obviously as a regular
Yeah.
camera.
yeah, that is a commonality, is they tend to have difficulty with audio. But I'll put it up in the Facebook group, Yana. Walk us through what your basic process is and what your questions were. Feel free to just role play it here.
Okay. So before I go ahead and do that, as far as bringing them into the office for the enrollment, as long as there are more windows, you think that would be okay to do? Or change the desk, or what do you?
If I had my preference, I wouldn't want to be sitting across the desk.
Okay.
Right. And the what a lot of us have a tendency to do is create an administrative office in the school and then do sales in it, rather than have a sales office in the school and then figure out where to get the administrative stuff done. Right. And all the money comes from the sales process. It doesn't come from, filing, for tax forms and, keeping accounting records and all that kind of stuff. Right. So always start with, how can I set this environment up to maximize the sales presence? And a lot of times what I would do with an office like this, John, is I would take that desk and put it, again, I can't see the full extent of that little office, but you could put an L-shaped desk across the back wall and which then it's kind of set up like a credenza. You can turn around and have your back, to the windows. But then what you can do is you can put a round table or an environment that's more comfortable. And again, think of what you see, like executive offices in movies. A lot of times they have, or the Oval Office. The Oval Office is set up where you have the desk, and then you have two couches and another chair for conversations. And those kinds of arrangements are set that way for a very specific reason, right? Where somebody sitting on the other side of a desk tends to be, you're fired, or they're a disciplinary environment, or they're something like that, where a more informal feeling environment maintains its student-teacher relationship better and makes it a more comfortable conversation.
Yeah,
Okay.
and I wouldn't, I don't know how big the room is, looking at it all, but like Master Oliver said, if you took that L shape and put it to the back wall, and then put a small round table there, and then had the windows, then I think it's going to open up everything. And then you still got your working desk in the back, and then you have your round table just for your closes. And then you've got the open window. And I really like the open windows, especially if they go into the classroom or something, where I can, during that conference, I'll always refer, you see all those students out there, they're all working towards the black belt. We start on our basic program, et cetera, but it kind of, it gives you a chance to also see what's going on, but it opens up the room so much more. It doesn't seem so confined.
Yeah, and now if you take it out of the sales environment, school layouts that drove me absolutely crazy personally were anytime I ended up with an office where I couldn't see the front door and couldn't see the traffic of people coming in and out, or if I had an office that I didn't have a direct line of sight into the classroom, right? And when you have a classroom and an intro room, I always tried to have a window to the intro room, a window to the main floor where I could see the front door. And it just became real evident to me that if people were walking in and out and I didn't see them walk in, I was losing renewals, and I was having a gap in time lag to greet intros and so forth. And by the way, that video is up on the Facebook group right now. I just posted it as soon as it resolves it. So in the classroom, no matter what your structure is, as far as who's the head instructor, who's the program director, who's the branch manager, all that stuff, whoever is not the person on the floor with 30 or 40 people, the other person, part of their responsibility is to be able to see the forest for the trees and help the instructor see things that they may not notice, right? So, when I'm an instructor and I have 30 people, it's easy for me to miss the little kid over in the corner picking their nose with the, right side out, not left side out, or whatever it might be. And it's easy for me to miss the mom who's got a scowl on her face and is upset about something that was said or something that's going on. And there's so many different nuances and things that can go on that it requires that second person to pay attention. As the owner operator, it's the useful thing about you being there where, you don't get, if you get stuck in the office and you have no windows and the door is closed and you're doing paperwork, all kinds of bad stuff happens in the school, or all kinds of opportunities pass that pass you by, right?
And in the intro room also, I would never have an intro room that didn't have windows all on it, because I want to know what's going on in there. Even me as a head instructor, one of my instructors is in there, I want to be able to look in and see what's going on and see that things are going the way they should be. And it's so easy and so cheap to put those, frame out a window in every room on all sides that is possible. I mean, if the other side of the wall is a brick wall and it's not going anywhere, but if it's going into the hall, if it's going into the classroom, for your office, when if I'm sitting at my desk in the office, I want to be able to see what's going on in the classroom. But it opens up every room that you put windows in also, and it gives it a lot bigger.
And it wasn't just you and your husband.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree with that. My intro room does have a window and that is really helpful. So I do like that. So I think it would be nice to have one in the office as well.
Yeah,
If I-
it's, go ahead. I'm sorry, Anna.
I was just gonna say, if I were to do the enrollment back in the intro room versus in the office, how do you take care of the paperwork without a back and forth?
Yeah,
Um,
you do have to go back and forth if you're gonna
Well,
do it.
not necessarily. Well,
I always did mine in the office, I'm sorry, for the enrollment.
well, no, I mean, as far as the paperwork, I guess in the enrollment, there's only two pieces, right? There's them signing an agreement, and then there's processing a credit card,
Yes.
right? And on the back and forth, the back and forth piece can be useful, to tell you the truth, because when I wasn't set up in an intro room to process the credit card in the intro room, and nowadays it's easy. You just get the little dongle for your phone and you swipe it and you're good. You don't need landlines anymore for those things, right?
Mhm.
But when you had to go back and forth, I would use it strategically. So we're done with everything essentially. They're giving me the credit card. I'm turning around a clipboard and having them fill out the agreement. While they're filling out the agreement, I go process the credit card. I come back, I fill out the credit card information on the form and then give it back to them and they okay it, and then we, move on. But nowadays, all the credit card readers, you can have the dongle on the phone or you can have it's Wi-Fi. And so you can just have it in there and you swipe it right there and you're good to go and it doesn't interrupt anything. Almost not, that would not be an accurate statement, what I was getting ready to say, but I've done hundreds of, if not thousands of enrollments with 4 chairs and a clipboard and no desk, no table, no nothing. Sometimes sitting outside on the sidewalk, sometimes on the edge of the classroom, and most of the time in an intro room. And to me, the only stipulation on that is I much prefer to have someplace where other people aren't listening in, because then they're more comfortable telling you things that they might be uncomfortable talking about in a group setting, rather than a private setting.
And you would just need clipboards. I mean, as long as you had your clipboard,
Okay.
you can pass it over and sign it and you can write on. Don't try to do it without clipboards.
Exactly. Yeah. But that would be the only reason you need to leave the office, right?
Yeah.
And if you have a process, and I know some people do, where you're typing in the agreement on a computer, or you're having them sign it on an iPad or something. We did for a number of years on the software that I designed. Program director had to sit there and type in all the information on the computer, and then it would spit out the agreement. And I found it extremely counterproductive. So, every time I went, and I really tried one more level of automation, I always backed off of it sooner or later. ID cards and the agreements, we automated it in 3 or 4 different ways over the years. Every time it made us less efficient and less effective, not more efficient. So I always backed off of it. I still prefer, I have a printed contract, they fill it in by hand. I'm going to take a look at it, make sure it's legible. And by the way, if you have a lot of enrollment conferences coming in, we filled it in by hand for everybody coming in, right? So if I have 8 intros and I know it's going to be hectic, the night before we filled out the paperwork for each and every one of them. And all I didn't have was their payment method. In fact, sometimes they had an paid intro and I already had their payment method. So all I had to do was turn it over and have them agree to it. Other times I would have, here's 10 over here with, it's one person, here's 10 over here with a family enrollment. And I'm just going to grab it and turn it over, give it to them, and they're good to go from there. So anything you can do to facilitate that process.
Okay, yeah, I think that would be helpful. I have it on a printed piece of paper anyway, so the card and the signature is the only thing I really need.
Yeah, and all the card readers anymore, you can either get the phone dongle or you can have the wireless machine, and you're good to go.
So then it would be fine without a table and without a computer in the intro room to do that.
Oh yeah. You don't
Okay.
have any need for a computer, and the table, the round table is kind of helpful, but I was always just kind of writing on a clipboard upside down, I'd have the clipboard and I'm talking to my, talking and using it as a checklist and turn it up and I'd write it there. And even on the, as Patrick was asking about that quick start video, it's me doing it with shares. And I'm as comfortable with that as I am with a table or anything else. But do spend a lot of time on the sales orchestration. And by the way, to point out, we didn't point this out before. You are in a uniform or in a black belt, which is exactly right. I've seen some schools actually try to have like a salesman in a suit or something like that. Here, let's go talk to the business guy. See, that's a bad scenario. You want an instructor talking to a student about their ongoing progress. And if I have staff in the school, they're either going to be in full uniform, or maybe they're not a black belt, or maybe they're not a very advanced students. I might have them in a polo shirt and and karate pants and and a polo shirt that has the name and logo and stuff like that. But they're gonna look like an instructor. They're not going to look like a quote unquote business person, right?
Yeah.
Just because it has kind of a jarring impact on the relationship as you're going through it there.
Just like Lionel is wearing now. Is that your school logo on your shirt there, Lionel?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, see, that looks very good. And then below, he's going to have his karate pants on, or his belt, or
You're assuming he's not wearing his boxer underwear there.
Oh, no, just shorts.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Shorts. But I mean, if I can add on, you're absolutely right. Anytime we sit down with a partner, with a parent or something like that, we obviously are in our uniform. And we call it like, you're on show. So the kids always look at you different when you're not wearing your uniform. It's almost like that you were Superman, but now you're Clark Kent, and they're like, what happened here? Like, you're not, as great as I guess they thought you were when you're in regular clothes. So
Yeah.
so much so that when they see you out in public, I'll have parents, they'll say, "Oh, I didn't recognize you with your clothes on." And then people are looking around like, "Whoa, wait a minute. Wait a minute. What did that mean?"
Yeah. And by the way, there were Paul, thank you for posting that picture of your intro room. It's in the group as well. And then Dave Hansen had a question, and Dave, don't let me forget to come back to it here. It's kind of off the subject of enrollment conference, but the start of the conversation looked like this was a laydown. They loved everything you did. I assume you got the enrollment on that one?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
Walk us through, Jan, a little bit of the actual language that you're using and whatever you may be uncertain about.
I think you gave me the answer I didn't know I needed, so thank you for that.
You bet.
But
I have that irritating habit.
it was good, thank you.
Well, and it also shows that if you do a good presentation, regardless of where you do it, if it's really good and you really pre-frame the parents right, it's just that the more of the little things you do, the better your percentages. You'll catch some that you might not have caught or could have created an atmosphere. So you're just trying to make everything kind of fall in your favor, and doing those little things like that will help over the long run.
Oh yeah, I mean, if they're good enough to go and there aren't any problems, you can do an enrollment at the front desk, with 5 other people ask you questions. It's just every time you ding the comfort of the environment and the sales strategy and so forth, you're making it a little bit more difficult for yourself. And what I want to do is I want to make it, I want to have every advantage humanly possible. And mostly I'm not going to enroll somebody who's not ready to enroll anyway, but I don't want to have them go from excited to frustrated or excited to have trepidation or anything in the process. What I want to do is make sure that I keep that excitement up and keep them engaged. And again, going back to, they can still see the classroom. As Master Smith was saying, you have pictures of students and testimonials and, black belt language, and you have all of the credibility tools and all that stuff on the walls. All of that helps maintain that that environment. So you want to just check off the list and make sure you do everything that's going to make it go in your favor, and eliminate anything that's not going to go in your favor.
And the way you're sitting on Zoom right now, if you people that are at the school, actually get on Zoom and put your laptop or your camera where it's pointing at you with what those parents are going to see, and then you can see what's in the back, and is the back representing what you want to convey across to these parents or these new students. See, are you at the school now, Yana?
I am, yes.
Yeah, see, even in the background there, I see more blank walls. So I would really get that whole school, be in that, are you a black belt school? Get that whole black belt feel. Those that saw Tim's school with the way that it was laid out with all the black belt verbiage and everything, that's kind of what, a perfect scenario of what you should try to get across. Don't have blank walls. Blank walls don't sell anything. Make sure that it's something that's going to help convey the message or the motivation or the inspiration that you want to get across to the students. And then make sure when you're teaching the class that we're talking about every one of those signs that's up. And I'll ask the students straight out, who can tell me what this means? And I'll say, go ahead and read that for us and tell us what that means. And who would like to do that? And then you get somebody talk, and then they're talking about, see, these a black belt is a white belt who never quits, and train like a black, if you want to be a black belt, train like a black belt. We want them to understand that, training like a black belt means that you're coming to class twice a week, and training like a black belt means if you miss class, you're going to call and make up that class. Training like a black belt means giving 100%. See, that the students will be saying all these things if you've said them to them. But if they've never heard it, I'll guarantee you the first time you ask it, what does it mean training like a black belt? Then you'll hear a pin drop. But if you've been conveying this message, and now when they're going to hear these subliminal messages, that's all the pre-framing that you need when you bring them in for that enrollment conference or that renewal conference. Have they not heard all of those messages and all of that, what I call it, pre-selling? You have a unique opportunity. You get to give them the information that's going to help them make the right decision when they come to your office. If they don't hear any of that information that's going to convince them that they can be a black belt, or they should be a black belt, or what it means to be a black belt, then they can't make that decision. They won't know how to make that decision. Does that make sense? You're muted, Master Oliver.
I have a question, if you guys don't mind. Is there any point where it would be okay not to have the child present for the intro? Or is that just something you do 100% of the time?
For the intro or the enrollment?
I'm not the intro. I'm sorry, the enrollment. Yes.
Well, when we have a lot of intros, a lot of enrollments to do, the kid won't be there. We'll be talking about it. And then I'll ask the parent, and the parent will say, well, we're going to talk to him and see what if he likes it. And then say, okay, well, let me go get him. And then I'll go get him and bring him in. Now, if I don't have one intro today and, one enrollment conference today, and well, then I'll bring the kid in after the class with the parent. But
I'll give a different answer. I never do an enrollment conference without the kid. And I imagine Master Moody would say the opposite, if he doesn't care if he's there or not, because he doesn't care, whether he liked it or not. But I always have every decision maker and the student there. Again, to me, it's one of those things where, as Master Smith just said, well, we want to go talk to him and see if he's interested. And then you go grab the kid And well, that's now putting you on the spot, right? And there's a checklist of things that can get in your way. And the idea is to mark them all off and have absolutely nothing that's an impediment. And it's where, you know, you go from getting 50% conversion on enrollments to 55 to 57 to 60 to 61 to 63 to 68 to 65 to 70. And every one of those increments, if you average it out over a year, so if I have on average 15 enrollments a month and suddenly I'm now doing 17 enrollments a month, that adds easily another $12,000 or $15,000 a month to the gross, right? And so if I'm doing 25 enrollments a month and suddenly I'm doing 27, and then suddenly I'm doing 29, see, every enrollment you do is adding $6,000, $7,000, $8,000 a year, or 8,000, you know, or at least lifetime value to the school. So you want to give yourself every little thing. And again, that's why we're so adamant about stats. You know, what can we do to get the second intro to enrollment rate up to 90%, up to 85%, whatever it might be. And it's usually kind of tick off, and there's a number of little things. Every one of them is a 3% or a 5%. But by the time you get done, you're creating a disadvantage for yourself rather than an advantage, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
Mas-
you don't need the kid there for the whole thing, but if you brought him in to the point where he was good and now the parents are good, well, I don't have to keep the kid in there while I'm doing all the paperwork and everything. Once they're committed, then he's back in the classroom.
Sure. I can put him back out there to train. I want to make sure I've gotten over dad turns to mom, dad turns to kids, says, are you going to be serious about this? And he says, yeah, and I can correct him and say, how about saying, yes, sir? Yes, sir. All right. I want to make sure I've gotten past that point. Right. Plus, you know, parents behave differently, making decisions about what their child is going to do in front of their child or behind their back. Right. And parents are hesitant to be highly critical of their child in front of their child. So questions like, is he going to stick with it? Or do you want him to be a black belt? All things like that get different answers oftentimes behind the kid's back and in front of the kid, which is why, you know, I want him to be involved. Right.
That makes sense. So
yeah.
as a rule, you know, I'll have the kid there for the enrollment. However, outlying, I just did an intro for a 9-year-old, a little bit on the spectrum, acute ADHD. Mm-hmm. Mom loved it, kid loved it. And then he went home and pulled a knife on his babysitter. So she's going to want to, and I'm supposed to enroll him tonight. She's going to want to have a conversation about that, I'm sure, without him present.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Pulled a knife on the babysitter.
Brother, I can't make this up. Yeah, that's right. I can get this kid into shape.
Were
problem.
Were you teaching knife techniques in that class?
Absolutely not. I was not.
Oh my goodness. You know, I thought I had.
That's why Master Oliver doesn't like knives in the school.
I don't like knives. Period.
He never let them teach any knife techniques.
Oh no, we do knife stuff. I just made sure nobody. I just made sure nobody wasn't a black belt was in the present at the time. Certainly no intros.
But
and by the way, even
I would use that, Ben, as the selling tool. Is that he needs to learn control. He needs to
absolutely.
Learn. And this is why
I can get her to take it hook, line, and sinker. I know I can. And I know I can work with this kid and turn him around. I know it. The IEP meeting is disagreeing. They're saying, wait, you're teaching him combat. So as teachers and administrators at school or, you know, so.
No, you're not teaching him combat. You're teaching him conflict avoidance, right? That's what you're
right. Preach to the choir. Agreed. Yeah.
Educate them.
You are in California. We've got to factor that in. Just saying. Just saying.
Relevant.
Yes.
One, you can blame the Food Network, but two is, remember you always talk about acoustics for walls?
Yeah.
I bought a bunch of panels like these in different colors, and they're like maybe $2 each. I have about, I don't know, 500 of my dojos, and now it's all acoustic in my outro too. So one, the vibrations and the parents can't hear it outside, and keeps the heat in as well. So just adds
Yeah.
up, you can get panels like this
Yeah.
all day. I'll put them on our Facebook page. And I'll
Yeah.
put a picture of mine. They make all the colors, like brown,
Yeah, I mean,
these kind.
yeah, I mean, absolutely.
To use carpet.
Well, yeah, I mean, I really like the open ceiling look and you paint the ceiling black or whatever, but I've always hated the acoustics that come from that. If you look in auditoriums where they do musical performances or plays or one thing or another and pay attention to how they've set up the acoustics, it has a similar concern that we have. Walk into a movie theater, the way the movie theater does is they carpet all the walls in the hallway into the theater, have a lot of sound deadening material between theaters, and then they tend to have carpet on the walls and they have acoustic tiles on the ceilings. But I don't like echo. It drives me crazy and makes it difficult to teach. So therefore, yeah, like what we did on the walls that were mirrored, we'd do carpet above and below, and on the walls where parents were seated, we would do carpeting up to 4 or 5 feet on the wall. And occasionally we'd have to, argue fire ratings with, with fire departments and so forth. But other than that, and by the way, when you do you do glass, make sure you get glass where it's not going to cut somebody's head off if they go through the window. Make sure it's safety glass that shatters properly. So do be aware of that when you put glass in. Matt Smith, not the kind of glass that you and I put a few people through in the old days in Washington.
Yeah, we eventually learned that regular glass doesn't work. You have to have that special thicker safety glass.
Yeah. Well, you have to have something that'll shatter rather than end up being sharp pieces. But Dave Hansen, you had a
mirrors also. You got to be careful with those too, that you have those safety mirrors too, the thicker ones.
We always had them glued to the wall.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because that would keep them, even if somebody kicked it and broke it, it would keep it from popping out. Dave, you had a question about a school closing next to you?
Yeah, there's a school in our area. They teach a similar style of martial arts as we do, and they're doing away with their traditional karate program. And I had a few of their black belts approach me about training in our school. I was a little hesitant because usually they bring in that culture and from their school, and it's never worked really well for us in the past. Either they were shocked because they weren't pre-framed with our tuition structure or just how we do things. And I wasn't sure if I should even go there or if they should start over and kind of work like from a wipe up, learning our culture before I let them in, or how I should approach that.
Well, I agree with everything you said at the beginning, which it rarely works. But if it were me and you had a school that you knew was closing or you knew was phasing out something, I'd go talk to the owner ahead of time. Sure. and say, I've had a couple of inquiries of people who are doing, whatever it was that you're not going to do anymore, and I fully understand. Maybe we can keep them from being orphaned and move them smoothly over here, and you'd be welcome to be over here a couple days a week to get them, transitioned or whatever the case might be. I have actually tried a number of times to just take over schools and take over their student body. Mm-hmm. And almost every time the instructor owner would shoot themselves in the foot rather than be cooperative, just because I always considered it purely an ego issue, right? Yeah. But I will tell you is if somebody happened to have 20 white belts who are learning something, they're not going to, they're going to shut down or not going to teach anymore, and 60 students in the first year, I would much rather get them than try to deal with any of their advanced ranks and black belts. Sure. Well, anytime I brought a black belt or advanced rank in from a different school, I always start them from scratch. I never let them walk in the school and wear their previous rank. Yeah. But with the stipulation of you've learned a similar style. There are going to be some differences. What we're going to do is run you all the way back up to the curriculum, just like you're starting. That's just kind of like moving to a new company and kind of working through the whole operation. As soon as you've mastered any level, we'll move you up to the next level, move you up to the next level. It's not like you have to stay at every belt for 2 or 3 months.
We call it a review cycle. We'll put you on a review cycle, and when you when we feel you know the curriculum well enough, we'll just do a informal test, not a formal test, and then move you into the next level and keep moving you up until you're back to where you're comfortable.
Okay.
Yeah. And the mistake, honestly, is to show deference.
Sure.
Right? I mean, you've got to create a new student-teacher relationship, and if they're going to be comparing what you do to the old guy, and when they do that, they always think the way they learned it to begin with is right. So, if they're unwilling to come in and relearn white belt basics and unwilling to go through the process, that just means that they're not a good fit anyway. And by the way, I charge them the same as anybody else would pay, and all of that stuff. And you are right also about pricing. Most typically, you're bringing somebody in who was paying half or a third of what you were charging, or they were doing month to month, and you're going to have them do an agreement or something like that. So even there, I've seen students who came in and loved everything we're doing, and we're so professional and they're so amateurish, and this is great and this is great. Then how dare you charge that much? It's like, well, I mean, you get what you're paying for.
That's why your school's out of business. I would even do that, Dave, with the green belt or blue belt. Doesn't matter what belt he is. Okay. Everybody starts at white belt, and I put them on a review cycle, because I don't want you to have a blue belt in our school with the same as our blue belts if there was something you missed along the way. So we'll have you do a review to make sure you know what our students know. And we'll do informal testing till you get back to the belt you were before. And once you are, then you'll be good to go on regular testing from then on.
All right. I appreciate that. One follow-up question there is, I've had difficulty navigating this when I had other people come in the situation, is they already kind of have a slant. They just want to know price, and I want to show them value. How do I, before I get to that point, how do I cut them off from just trying to get right to the tuition before they actually see what we have?
Tell them everybody has to go through an intro.
Okay.
We have an introductory process. It's an orientation, and we're going to go through and see what you know and do a little evaluation. Once we see, how you're doing, and if this is a good fit for you, and we think it's a good fit, then we'll show you how our programs work and get you started.
Okay.
Yeah, and let me add to that. Is I just posted a God, what was the name of the show? Well, the old show about the Madison Avenue Mad Men, Madison Avenue ad people in the 60s. But there's a great scene with Dan Draper, I think was the character's name. And it's all about takeaway selling. And what you want to do is, if somebody makes the process about price, you always reframe it to making it about them qualifying to participate and being accepted.
All right.
Right. And so your attitude is admissions counselor at Harvard or West Point or Stanford, right? Well, Ms. Jones, first thing we need to do is we need to let you take a couple classes and see if Billy qualifies for the program and what makes the most sense for him. So we'll start with a couple of lessons, and then we'll evaluate. And if he's accepted into the program, if he qualifies, then what we'll do is look at the program structure and see what's best for him. Well, how much is it going to be? Well, I mean, you don't have to do anything. Yeah, but you don't have to do anything you're not comfortable with, and we're not sure yet whether he's going to qualify to train as a student.
Okay.
And by the way, nothing makes somebody beg for it more than taking it away.
Sure.
right? It's
Right.
why the enrollment and renewal process really has to be, you've got to anchor in of, you're not trying to talk them into something, they're trying to talk you into it,
Okay.
right? And so I want to make sure I have a great class, they enjoy it, it's fun, that I show benefits and prove the benefits. But then, and that's the whole process of the enrollment conference, is it's all a takeaway process, right?
Right.
Prove to me that you're going to be permanent in the area. I mean, I'm not saying prove to me, but it's the language is, are you going to be permanent in the area? Don't want anything to get in the way of this. Okay. Is Billy healthy? Want to make sure. Yep. Great. We want to make sure you can come a couple times a week. Want to make sure that he's memorized the student creed. It's all about putting it on them
Yeah.
to kind of prove that it's a good fit. Right.
Sure. Right.
And again, with the people from the other school too, I mean, you're much better off to have the idea and the body language of, we'd love to have you here. However, we do what we do, and you've got to love what it is we do, and we do it the way we do it. And
Yeah.
if you don't like that, then, that's more power to you. But,
Sure.
here's what we do. I mean, that's got to be the language. And you never want to come across as arrogant, but at the same time, you want to be doing an interview for a highly selective school,
Mhm.
not trying to, pitch your wares to anybody who stumbles in from the sidewalk.
Okay.
One
And so
other,
if they-
one other
Go
suggestion.
ahead, Dave. What were you going to say?
And so if they're a black belt coming in, and like Grandmaster Smith said, start them as a white belt, would they start in the basic class as a white belt, or would they start as a white belt like in your black belt class?
Basic class.
Oh, no.
Okay, thanks.
Every cycle, every belt level curriculum all the way up, they have, and call it a review cycle. And then that
Okay.
sounds a little better than they have to start over.
All right.
Yeah,
Appreciate
yeah.
it.
Say we put all of our students that have had previous experience, obviously they're going to progress faster than our normal students, but not everything we do is the same as what you do. So we want to know what you know and make sure you know what we know. And so we'll start you in our basic, and you'll do a review cycle until you get back. And it's just an informal test. When we think you're ready, we'll move you into the next group and next level and keep moving you until you're back to where you were.
Okay.
One last suggestion, as Master Oliver said, we both have taken over schools before. We both accepted students from other schools. One of the things that I always did with the owner, when I found out somebody was going out of business, I'd go and have a meeting with them and explain to them that we'd be glad to accept your students if you don't want to leave them out in the cold, so to speak. If you would like to put together a letter of recommendation for our school, everybody who comes in from your school that signs up on our basic program or for one of our programs, we'll give you $100 for each one that signs up.
Okay.
And if you want to put it to a letter together, and I'll take a look at it, if
Sure.
it looks good, then you can mail it out to all your people. Tell them in the classes, announce that you're going to be closing down, but we've worked an arrangement where you can now go, if you want to continue your training, you can go over to such and such academy down the street and blah, blah, blah.
And by the way, in a situation like that, if they have people who are prepaid for a year, prepaid for 2 years, whatever, I always just honored everything. Most of them don't come over anyway. Most of them don't stay long. But
what I would do, I did exactly what he said. If they had a year program, we would honor that time. If they had a prepaid year, I would even honor the prepaid year, but they would have to sign up for another year with us. And so they would start making monthly payments. So that free year would be tacked on to whatever program they signed up with us. And that way we're still going to get at least a year of tuition for that next year that they already paid for. But there's usually, in most schools, there's not many that have a whole lot that have prepaid. It's more that they have a year agreement or a 2-year agreement. We just ask them to bring that agreement, and then we'll honor the time. And if they say, well, what about the price? And say, well, our price is our price, but we will, put you on a compatible program in length of time.
Okay, I appreciate that.
Yeah, but to be fair, the number of times you get somebody else who's enlightened enough to be cooperative, I've had it more often than not. They think that I'm the blame for them going out of business. Or they've been so pissy about my existence from the day they started that then turning around and being an ally was difficult. So, it's not exactly a very useful strategy. I very intentionally tried to go, track down schools that I knew were on their last legs, and pretty much every time. I mean, once or twice it was fine. I used to have people who weren't in our area constantly trying to give me their schools, and I think one time we put took over one, but really even that, it was all about let's add 100 students in the first month and 200 in the first 90 days, and if any of the existing people are there after that, great. If not, I don't care. And it was we ended up with a few, but I think in that location they had 70 students or something like that. We ended up with 20 who were pissed off and 20 who stayed, and the balance just kind of faded out pretty quickly.
Yeah,
So
appreciate it.
So I have a
go ahead.
question in regards to the price. Everything's been working actually pretty well for me, but occasionally I'll get a person that will call up and say, well, we really need to know the price because we don't want to bring our kid in. The intro goes great. They love it. They want to join, and then we can't afford it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really know how to respond to that except set up a meet and greet for me to meet with the parents individually and explain the program. But I wanted to get a recommendation from you guys.
Well, on the info call, our script for our staff was very specific. They asked the first time, ignore. They asked the second time, go to the introductory program. They asked the third time, give them a range. And so what that looked like in practice was the phone rings and, you answer the phone and they say, how much are your lessons? Well, they don't want to know how much your lessons are necessarily. They just don't know anything to ask. So we'd always just, that's the ignore. So, oh, is this for yourself, for a child who's at 4? Oh, it's for my son. Great. How old is your son? 7. Great. Has he ever done anything like this before? No. Okay. Well, how'd you find out about it? Well, I got this coupon. I saw you online, whatever it might be. And then, the conversation goes on. And then they come back to, and by the way, how much are your lessons? I say, well, that's as I was explaining, the first couple lessons are free. There's no obligation, or the first 2 weeks are $19.97 or whatever it was. But the first 2 weeks are free. There's no obligation. Gives you a chance to come in and see the instructor, come in and meet the instructor, see the facilities, learn more about the benefits of the program. Gives you a chance to evaluate how Billy's going to do and gives him a chance to see how he does with the program. And then I just go on in to making an appointment, right? And then occasionally you get, as you said, William, I don't want to get him all excited about this if there's just no way I'm going to possibly be able to afford it.
Right.
And then we would come back and say, well, as I explained, there's no obligation, no cost for the first couple of lessons or for that introductory program. After that, there are different types of programs, ways to structure it. On average, generally, it's going to range. I mean, pick what the price range is for you right now. But on average, generally, it's going to range from $325 to $397 a month.
What are you charging now, William?
$297.
Okay, so you could say the tuition runs approximately $250 to $297.
Yeah.
And your reason you can say $250 is because if they pay it in full, that's about what it's going to break down to.
Yes.
Yeah.
Sir.
Yeah, if they do the year paid in full, not that you explain that, because the last thing you want to do is go down that rabbit
Yeah,
hole.
I don't explain that at all. I was just
Yeah.
explaining that to you. So when they do say, when you tell them it's $297 on the monthly, they say, well, I thought you said it was $250. And I said, well, between $250 and $297, were you more interested in the $250 price? Yes. How would I do that? Well, that's our paid in full. If you do that on a credit card, and then you could pay your credit card back monthly. And so you could still capitalize on the $250 average cost.
Yeah, some parents prefer to pay the 12 months initially. often on their credit card or something like that. If you prefer to do that, there is a discount for that. But yeah, on the call, I mean, that's the ignore introductory program is free. And then it's going to vary, but on average it's going to be.
95% will, and once they ask it once, twice, only maybe a couple percent will ever get that point where, well, I don't want to bring him in if I can't afford it, kind of thing. But if you do, then just throw that at them.
Yeah.
Because if that scares them off, and I always tell them before I say it. Now, remember, it's not always what it costs, it's what it's worth. And that's why we really like you to try the program so you can really get a sense of the value, because we don't just teach martial arts, it's a complete character development program for kids that teach them life skills too. So a lot of our parents see the real value and benefit in that. And sometimes I'll use that and then not have to even give the price. But then if they still push the price, then I'll tell them, but at least I got that part in there. So they don't think they can call every school and then they're just going to pick the cheapest one. See, our school is different than the others. We do teach not just the martial arts, but we have a well-designed character development program that teaches this and that. You know, you kind of explain it out, and life skills that help them the rest of their life, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, but
Can I ask about that? One of your members mentioned it to me, and to do it in this order, and it's worked very powerfully for me. But I try to get to them before they even ask about price. So I'll say, so here's the process. We want to get them enrolled. We want to schedule the intro, and then after that, we'll schedule them for the first group class. After that, if it seems like a good fit, and I just gloss over this part. After that, if it seems like it's a good fit, then I'd be happy to sit down and talk about membership pricing, etiquette, ranking, that sort of thing. How does that sound to you? And I kind of bury it behind some other stuff. Does that make sense?
It doesn't, but it does set you up for them to ask you when you say that.
Okay.
The way our script is designed, it's not designed to even point that out.
Copy.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I agree. And I use the word tuition, not membership price. Right. I want to be in the, this is a school tuition. It's not a membership fee to be in the gym. Okay. On that note, we're way over our time limit. Any other questions? Post them in the group. Master Smith, Mr. Dunn, let me keep you for 30 seconds. And everybody else,